In this lesson, we're going to continue looking at validations. In particular, we'll be looking at validations which depend upon the previous answer to a question earlier in the survey. But before we jump into that, I'd like to say a few words about how validations fit into the CAPI workflow when you're designing your system. So quite often you'll receive your questionnaire from the person who designed it, and this questionnaire will have minimal or even no instructions for you, the system builder, as to what validations should be implemented. At this point in the workflow, I think it's really important that there is communication between you, who is building the system, and the person who designed the questionnaire to make sure that validations are implemented as they should be, because different people can have different ideas about how survey questions work and what kind of answers we should be expecting. Okay, with that in mind, let's take a look at our example questionnaire. So let's take the example of B9 in our questionnaire, asking about marital status. Now, it's uncommon that somebody will be married, divorced, widowed, or separated if they are less than 18 years of age. But that's not to say it's completely impossible. Sometimes marriages take place at 16 or 17 years of age. So rather than skipping this question for people of a certain age, what I'm going to do is write a warning message. To set this validation, I'm going to go to B9 in the designer. Then I'll add a new validation rule. It's going to be a warning. What I'm going to do here is describe all the instances when I don't want the validation error message to display, so all the times that the answer is valid. So I'm going to start with self is equal to 1. This is never married, and never married is an acceptable answer for anybody at any age. Next, I will use or, so we can describe the other times when our answer is valid. This is when self is greater than 1, and B6 is greater than 17 years of age. For the warning message, I'm going to write the respondent is young to have been married already. Let's see how this works. So first, let's enter that the respondent is 17 years of age. Now when we come to the marriage question, if they're never married, no warning. But any of the other options will display the warning message for us. Now, if I change the age up to 18 years of age, this warning has disappeared. So you can see now how we can use validations to collect data which is unlikely but not impossible, as opposed to using a skip pattern and making an assumption about what the answer would have been. Let's consider the example of education here. There is usually a set time in someone's life when they reach a certain educational milestone. Example, completing primary school usually happens at around 11 or 12 years old. While this is the usual case, there are some cases that are a little bit different. We might have a child genius or something like this, whereby they'll have an unusual answer. So here we can use a warning message to distinguish between an unusual case and a simple entry error by the interviewer. Let's have a look at our questionnaire now. Looking now at the education question in our example questionnaire, which is at B10, you can see we have the first 10 codes here, and these relate to each grade in primary and high school. Now, take for example each of these grades. There's a sort of minimum age we'd expect a person to be before we pass these grades. So if a person had passed the 6th grade, but they were only 4 years old, this would be a little bit strange. So what I'm going to do is take all of these answer codes here, 1 through 10, and I'm going to add a 3 to them. So to have passed grade 1, we should be 4 years old or more. Grade 2, we should be 5 years old or more. For this next section of codes, 11 through 13, these are the codes for finishing high school. So I'm going to make these 16 or higher. And for all the university ones, let's make them 18 or higher. For special education or no schooling, you can of course be any age. So back in the designer, at question B10, I've gone ahead and set this question up for us already because the syntax is quite long, as you can see. Basically, what I've done is use these sections in parenthesis to describe all the times when I don't want the validation message to display and separated them by all symbols. I've got 4 separate times when it's okay. Inside of each one, I'm saying for the first 10 codes in the education question, it's going to be acceptable if the age is greater than this question plus 3. If any of these conditions are offended, I'm going to ask the respondent to double check the age and the educational level of the respondent. It's a little bit tricky, so let's see how this works when we test. So let's imagine the respondent is 14 years of age. So for a 14-year-old, it's acceptable that they've only passed the 2nd grade. So we see no warning message. They could have passed the 6th grade because 14 is an okay age for that. However, when we come to these codes like past grade 12, most likely a 14-year-old hasn't completed high school, so we should have a warning for them there. Yes. And then our last codes, like special education or no schooling, are permittable at any age. That's all for this lesson. As you can see, validations can become reasonably complex for you to write in survey solutions. So you'll need to get into the mindset of thinking about all the times when the validation message should not appear and writing your code to reflect these. Join me next lesson and we're going to take a look at validations for date type questions.